Uh, this is today's lesson, a beautiful day to learn. With us, this is Jenny. Hi Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll just continue? I know you have a lot of experience in sports, in goalball, as a teacher, so we can go around these different topics and yeah, I will just continue.
Yeah, cool. Hi everyone listening. I'm Jenny, 31 years old. When I was born with a genetic eye condition called ocular cutaneous albinism. So that means I'm legally blind. I have very pale skin, very pale hair. So that's a result of the condition. Growing up though, I had a very normal childhood. I don't think I was treated any differently. Obviously I couldn't see very well, but I just did everything my sisters did. I'm the youngest of three, so my parents just treated me very normally. I played netball, I did surfing, did a bit of cross-country running, I think in high school for a bit, just everything normal.
So what was your vision like?
My vision...
Has it remained the same?
Yeah, it's pretty much remained the same. I think it dropped a little bit in my 20s, but it's pretty much the same. It's quite hard for me to explain because I was born with it, so I don't know what you guys, or normal sight is, so for me to compare. But the best way to explain it, so I have full field, I have full colour. Everything is just less detail. So if you were looking at a tree and a person, and you were standing 60 metres away, obviously that tree and that person would be in less detail. So it's not blurry for you guys, it's just less detail. That same amount of detail I would see 10 metres or closer, if that makes sense. So it's not blurry, it's just less detail.
For example, for faces or...
So if I'm close, I can see eyes and a nose and a mouth, but I couldn't see freckles or pimples or the colour of your eyes or anything. And then if I was further away, then I couldn't see a face. I could tell it was a human, but I might not be able to see the gender or if it's someone I know or don't know, or I might not be able to recognise.
So in that case, for example, it would be recommendable to go with the cane or with a guide dog or not?
I can. I do have a cane. I don't really use it. Yeah. I just find, I think, I generally don't need it because if I'm in familiar places, if I'm unfamiliar, then it's handy. But I just find also it's because I can see and I do use my eyes. When I use a cane and then use my eyes, you just get the public. I just don't think understands that concept of someone can see and use a cane, and just that. I just can't stand that. Just people staring and confused, or they'll comment, "Of course you can see it," and things. So sometimes it's just easier just not to use it.
Yeah, I have heard a bit of that. This thing with the cane is
yes. Yeah. If you just because you use a cane or have a guide dog, you're not totally blind. You can still see. Yeah. Some people can still see.
Well, interesting. So that's the condition. What was the name?
Ocular cutaneous albinism. So ocular for eyes, cutaneous for skin, and then albinism means lack of colouring.
And is it genetic?
Yeah, it's genetic. So it's no, it's genetic. And for people who understand genetics, it's recessive. So no one, obviously my family carried the gene, but no one showed it. So I'm the only person in my family.
Okay. Thanks for that introduction. That's to understand a little bit more. So, but very cool. So you were close to the coast, the ocean, in New South Wales?
Yeah. So I grew up on the northern beaches of Sydney. Yeah. So for someone with very pale skin and can't see very well, it's not the best place, but it was beautiful. I love the beach. Oh yes. I still love the beach, and I love swimming in the ocean and body surfing. And I did try surfing as a kid, but I wasn't very good.
It sounds like sports have played very important role in your life, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't start playing elite competitive sport until I was 18. Yeah. But I always enjoyed trying different sports. I played touch football for a while too, growing up. I think I've always been someone who's happy to try things. And I think that I've carried that on into my adult life, is just when someone goes, "Hey, do you want to try this?" I said, "Yeah, here we go." I think that's always been my kind of philosophy.
You said you played professional or elite at 18?
Yeah, so at 18, again, someone came up to me and they said, "Oh, do you want to try the sport called Goalball?" And I'll explain what Goalball is because I assume a lot of people haven't heard of it. So, Goalball is a Paralympic sport for athletes with various levels of vision impairment. Everyone's blindfolded and the ball is 1.25 kilos. and it has bells inside, so you play entirely by listening, and the aim of the game is to roll the ball past the opposition into their goals. So the best way to imagine it is like reverse blindfolded dodgeball. So in that everyone's blindfolded, instead of dodging the ball, you want to get in front of the ball, and if it goes past, that's a goal. And so you kind of go back and forth. So that's goalball. I had heard of it growing up, but I'd never really played it or anything. Oh, I think I played it once at like a vision impaired come and try, but like it never really. I'd always played like normal able-bodied sports. So
how many people in each team?
There's three on court, and then we usually take 2 or 3 subs. So the team's like 5 or 6. Yeah. So,
wow, you said 1.2 kilograms. That sounds pretty heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy. When it hits you in the nose, yeah, it hurts. So someone came up to me when I was in my first year of uni. I was studying to be a teacher, and they're like, "Do you want to like learn how to play this sport to teach it to primary school kids?" And I was like, "Oh, perfect! This is great work experience." And so I did. And then she's like, "Oh, we also need a New South Wales team." I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll give it a go." Like, just always give things a go. And then we went to nationals, and we were okay, considering we'd only played for like 6 months. We were all right. They're like,
so there are different teams in Australia.
Yeah. Most, not every state has a team. New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, WA have teams. Yeah. So, back when I started, it was really only Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland. So it's grown in the last decade and a half. So that's good.
So it started with the purpose of teaching kids, but then you just continued.
Yeah, I just kept going, and after nationals, they're like, "Oh, do you want to join the Australian squad, like the training squad?" I was like, I'll give it a go. And then after that, they're like, "Oh, well, you've been selected onto your first international team," and I've remained on the Australian team since then.
That just sounds amazing. No? How was your experience at that point when they told you, "Hey, you want to make part of the Australian team"?
I don't think when I
representing their country.
When I remember, I don't know if it really sunk in, because I think because I did just go, I just kind of fell into it accidentally. While I did, like I was super proud to represent my country, and like the first time you wear a green and gold jersey, and you go, like that's amazing. But it definitely took me like a good 5 years, I reckon, to actually really understand what it takes to compete at an elite international level. Like I think the first few years, I kind of I trained hard, but I think I don't think I fully appreciated how much effort you've got to put in to get to be the best in the world or in your country.
That's so interesting. You said that it took you, I guess it's a whole process, but it took you around 5 years to. But would you like to describe what was the?
I think it was just different. Of course, I was training and I was doing the training, but I think it's about training mindfully. You're actually going rather than just being like tick your box. So, okay, I've got to train and get it done. It was more like being mindful of what are the skills I need to develop. Like I think it's everything. Like it's your physical training, but also that mental training. And then that competitiveness and even like game strategy. Like all those things. I think they don't just come, especially when you're just new to a sport. Like they take time to develop, and that comes from training and different competition experiences. It comes from winning. It comes from losing.
How did you take the losing?
Australia's pretty small in terms of the goalball, international goalball. Australia's pretty small.
Yeah, which countries are like pretty advanced in goalball?
America is like the Americas and Europe. So like America, Brazil are pretty good. Turkey, Russia. Kind of varies around Europe which countries. They kind of fluctuate, but it's very big in Europe. Because we're quite a small, I guess nation. And we're so far away, so it's so hard for us to compete. We did lose a lot, so you did very much got used to losing. I mean, but for us, like the fact that we were competitive with these best countries, and we don't get funding, we don't get paid. They get paid, and they do this for a full-time job. And we were competitive. Like not always do we win, but they had to work hard to beat us and things like that. And we still qualified for 3 Paralympic Games with very minimal funding and working full-time jobs. Like that's, I think you just, even though on paper it looks like we lost heaps of games. I think when you reflect on those achievements, you're like, we actually did really good considering what we had.
Yeah, it's not like if that's your main professional activity, you also have a job and more things to do.
Yeah, and when you're competing against countries where that's their full-time job.
But I feel like just being able to be part and play against these teams is already a huge achievement.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the Paralympics. What's this experience and which Paralympics?
Yeah, so I qualified, well, our team qualified for 3 Paralympic Games. So London 2012, Rio 2016, and then Tokyo 2020, which ended up being in 2021 because of COVID.
So it is usually like the Olympics, and then a few months after is the Paralympics.
Olympics, and then I think it's like 2 weeks or under 2 weeks, and then the Paralympics. So we go straight after the Olympics. So para means parallel. Okay. So we run parallel to the Olympics.
Right. How many sports do you think are running the Paralympics?
I think it's just over 20. I feel like it's like 22 or 23 or something. I don't know the exact number. Yeah, there's a lot of different sports, but they're all the same as the Olympic sports. The only 2 sports that are unique to Paralympics are goalball and another sport called boccia, which is for athletes with a physical impairment.
So what was the difference? What did you think was the difference between each of these Paralympics as you were getting more experience as well?
Like London I think will always be one of my favourites because it was the first. So
exciting.
It was so exciting, so new. Unfortunately, London was the only Paralympics we actually got to walk out of the opening ceremony because in Rio we were competing the next day, so we weren't allowed to. So a lot of athletes don't actually march in the opening ceremony, and then Tokyo we weren't allowed to because of COVID. I think London will always have a spot in my heart because of that. Like it's just we got to do the whole experience, the opening, the closing, and everything like that. Rio was cool because it was like a party, but there was they had a lot of rules on us for Rio because it was like not safe and things like that. So whereas London we could come in when we finished competing, we could go out of the village and
go to the language as well. No?
With Rio they were like the Australian, I guess, staff were a bit more strict with that, so you're kind of stuck in the village. But the village in Rio was better than the London village because it had like pools and stuff like that, so that was really nice. But the food was better in London.
Nice.
And then Tokyo was completely different because it was like in the middle of COVID, so we pretty much were just stuck to our little Australian block. We weren't allowed to, like, you literally just went Australian block, training or competition. That's it.
No spectators.
No spectators. We weren't allowed to like have any contact with other teams, and it's very strict.
What's the feeling of being on the court right before the game or during the game? You know, like playing against the team from another country.
Very nerve-wracking. It's like that weird mixture of like nerves, like where you feel sick in your stomach, but excitement, but then also trying to contain all that. So stay focused on what you need to do. But it's always really nerve-wracking. Still to the a decade later, it's still really nerve-wracking. But I think maybe without the crowds at Tokyo, I actually do think it probably helped. Without the crowds, because you didn't feel like when we compete at like our world championships or stuff, we don't really get that many crowds because no one's heard of goalball. But when you get to a Paralympics, you get like thousands and thousands of people watching you. So we're not really used to the thousands of people. So not having the crowds was more comfortable. But then also like that's so cool competing in front of thousands of people. Like you only get that opportunity once every 4 years. So.
Yeah, that's very impressive. There are some sports, I know, say basketball, soccer, for example, where they are going to kick a penalty or things that these players have done like maybe thousands and thousands of times. But I feel like that pressure of doing it in front of so many people and in a very important moment. Yeah, that's a mental strength. Yeah, and also obviously in our sport, the crowd has to be quiet because we play by listening, and the ball has because we're totally blindfolded and the ball has bells in it.
you know, even when the 1,000 people are quiet, you still can hear the crowd. Like, it's not quiet. And like Brazilians don't know how to be quiet. So like in Rio, the crowd was so loud. So like it's not even just the pressure of performing in front of people. It's actually really loud, and you can't like 1,000 people can't be dead quiet. That doesn't.
So, dropping that experience about the Olympics, what would you say were your main lessons in main takeaway?
I definitely.
You said you retired.
Retired now.
A few months ago, yeah.
I definitely became very resilient, and like I said, like we did lose a lot, and like team losses and also personal losses. You know, when I started, you know, I'd go overseas and not even get on court. You'd just be the person on the bench. Like that sucked too. And you know, in training, like the amount of training sessions that were horrible training sessions and nothing went right. Like I think you've just got to keep. I think resilience is such an important quality, and but I think what's really important, and I think because I'm a high school teacher, so I hope kids get this too. You can build resilience, and you can always build resilience. Like, and there's always going to be times in your like resilience doesn't stay. Like, there's going to be days where you have really low resilience, and you just can't bounce. It's so much harder to bounce back, but you've got to keep trying to be resilient. You've got to keep practicing those skills of, you know, putting failures behind you or learning from failures and trying again and trying again and trying again.
Is it worth the effort? I hope it is, but it's after being that resilient.
Yeah, well, I think it makes you a stronger person because, like, every day we face things that don't go right or failures or whatever. But like, if you can keep coming back or keep learning or keep trying again. The only thing I can think of is I think like take every opportunity. I think I wouldn't have started Goalball if I did. Like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if I was going to like it, but I just thought, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. I think that's an important lesson. Is just say, try, give everything a go. It doesn't mean I had to play Goalball for 12 years, but I gave it a go. Like, I could have given it a go and hated it, and that's fine. But I do think that's an important thing too. Is try everything before you decide you don't like something, and take risks and things. And I think that's like, with jobs or hobbies or even meeting new people. Like, take the time to meet, do things.
All right, so we covered a little bit of the sports part and Paralympics and Goalball. That's very exciting. And so you mentioned as well that you have been your profession is as a teacher as well. Let's go. How did you first started, or how did you realize you wanted to be a teacher?
I think I realized pretty early I wanted to be a teacher, like maybe 10, year 11. I think I knew that's what I wanted to be. Like, I thought about other jobs, and I think I did. And when I was in year 12, I applied for a scholarship, and I got the scholarship. So I got all my uni paid for me, and they gave me a job at the end of my uni, so that's pretty cool. I taught for 5 years in Sydney, and then I moved to Victoria, and I did a year, and then I took 2 years off from teaching, and I did another job. I actually did a job in relation, I was the education manager at Paralympics Australia, so I kind of combined. That was really cool because I got to combine like my education experience and career with my Paralympic knowledge, so that was quite cool. But I really missed being in the classroom and teaching children, so I'm back this year teaching. So this will be my 7th year teaching high school.
Wow, so impressive. So you realized it when you were finishing high school. How long does it take to study it?
I did a 5-year course because I did a combined arts and education course.
It takes some time. So you worked in New South Wales for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Now you are here in Melbourne. Why did you move to Melbourne?
Just for fun. My partner and I kind of said, it'd be cool to like live in another country. But then I was competing, and it just we couldn't move to another country. And he's like, "Oh, why don't we move to Melbourne?" I was like, "Okay." And then we stayed.
And new experience, just as you said, taking some risks.
Exactly, try something new.
Try.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. So you like to be in the classroom? So, kids, what age?
So I teach high school, so they're year 7 to year 12, which is age like 12, 13, 17, 18.
Yeah.
So teenagers.
What subjects?
My main subjects are English and drama, mostly drama. But this year I've got some humanities as well, which is like history and geography and stuff.
Does it involve acting?
Yeah, we try and teach the kids some acting skills. But I mean, like at that level, for most kids, it's more just about building their confidence and group work skills and that kind of thing is more important than being the world's best actor.
Yeah, that's very impressive. You mentioned that actually there are not many teachers with I'm not sure, with low vision or similar conditions as you mentioned.
Yeah, like this is something I don't know. I think as I become the more I teach, this is something I would like to somehow fit or I don't know influence with the Department of Education. So I work for the public system. So in public schools, I would guess most in a mainstream public school, most of our classes, like a quarter of kids would have some sort of disability, whether that's diagnosed or not. So let's say somewhere between 20 and 25% of kids. That's a guess. That's a guess. So that's not. I don't know the actual statistics. That's a guess. But I would say roughly somewhere around the 20% of kids would have a disability.
What type of disabilities?
Maybe like autism spectrum. I mean, at the school I'm teaching at the moment, we have a really big deaf facility. So heaps of kids are deaf. It could be mental illnesses. It could be obviously sensory impairments like vision impairment. And I think if we surveyed teaching staff, yes, I think there would be some teachers with mental illnesses or autism spectrum, those kind of disabilities. But in terms of sensory disabilities, deafness and vision impairment and physical impairment, I think you'd find very, very few, less teachers than students. And I think if we are teaching the maths student, it's that classic saying, you can't be what you can't see. So how are we expecting these students with disabilities to become fully functioning members of society, but the Department of Education doesn't have teachers who are role modelling being those members of society.
And you think there are not many people interested in actually do that role? Or?
Yes, I think there's people that are interested. I think there's barriers. I don't think it's interesting because when you talk about sport and the Paralympics, I think there's a really big acceptance of the Paralympics. Like people accept the Paralympic movement.
Because that's a space created for that.
Yeah, and that's very accepted. But I still think in the workplace and employment, disability is not accepted and it's not understood. And people can say, like most companies have a little disclaimer saying, "Yep, we accept everybody with disabilities. We encourage people with disabilities to apply." But I don't think companies are following through with that. I think if you did come in with a guide dog, I do think you wouldn't get the job.
Well, there is still a lot to improve, working on it. Well, overall, I'm from Colombia and I've been in Australia. I really feel like Australia is very advanced in many areas, and also people with different types of disabilities and the support. But definitely there is
still can do better.
Yeah, still a little space to improve.
Yeah, we're doing. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like obviously Australia's, and I've heard other stories from other countries too. Especially competing with Goalball and knowing and just asking them what it's like in other countries. We're definitely better than other countries, but still can be better.
Yeah, excellent. So you will, as I kind of understood, you would like to be that type of role model to students, so they can be fully functioning members of the society, as you mentioned.
I think so, and I think because I don't really tell the kids I have a disability, but they usually pick up that I look close at things, and it's like a non-issue to them. Like they'll just say, "Oh, Miss White, you look so close." I'm like, "Oh, I can't see it very well." "Oh, okay." Like it's and that's how it should be. Like just a non-issue. And the more I get to know kids, even some of them who have really small handwriting that I can't read, they'll just read it out, and you don't even need to ask anymore. They'll just do it. And that's what society. If we've got 15-year-olds who are not the most emotionally intelligent, who can do that, why can't adults do that in the workplace?
Yeah. So, what are some of the main lessons that you have learned? So, you have done this journey of studying at uni in 5 years and then working roughly 7 years, teaching or more?
I don't know if I think the lesson I find, I guess if we're talking about employment and disability and things like that, I think when you come across someone with a disability, just don't make the assumptions first. So I think I've found, for me, I go into like a workplace or whatever, and I prove I can do the job, and people are like, oh yeah, Jenny's a good teacher, and then they find out I have a disability. It shouldn't have to, so I don't tell people I have a disability up front, because I know I need to prove myself first, and then they won't have a problem with it. Whereas it shouldn't be that way. It should be the opposite way around. People should be able to go, yep, I have a disability, and you shouldn't have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I think that's a message. That's not just disability. I think isn't that just a message about judgment and assumptions that we all could take, including myself. You know, when you meet someone, don't make judgments and assumptions. Let them be themselves, and then you can go, yep, they can or can't do something.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I joined Achilles maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but what I have observed is that many of us, we haven't probably met any other person in the past, you know, like with any type, with different types of disability. So sometimes, for example, I remember the first time I met Kadek, and I wasn't sure how to behave or what to do or not to do, you know.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just trying to relate to those spaces. So so I guess that would be the message for people who maybe haven't had the experience, and maybe it's new for them at some point with someone with any type of disability. So.
And that's why we need people with disability in mainstream settings, whether that's our workplaces, our schools, our hospitals, our streets, because the more you're now better off around people with disabilities because you've had those experiences with people with disabilities.
And I really like it.
And if those people were in our workplaces, then everybody wouldn't have that lack of understanding or that ignorance and stuff. So they would know that they would know that people with disabilities can do everything. But the problem is our people with disabilities aren't in mainstream settings, and so no one can learn.
Yeah, it's totally.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I totally relate to this. How is the technology helping you, helping people with disabilities doing their activities?
Oh, heaps. Like even things. I mean, like I guess from a classroom perspective, if I think back, I was thinking about this the other day too. Like when I was at school, obviously they didn't have projectors or anything like that, so teachers just wrote notes on the board. And I couldn't really see them. All I used was like a little telescope to read the board and like write down the notes. Whereas now we have projectors, so I don't even write on the board as a teacher. I just type my notes. And if I had a kid with a disability, or actually for all my kids, even kids who don't speak English as a first language, I can just print off my notes, or I can upload them onto the internet. Or you could use something like Google Docs, and they can have it in front of them real time. Like there's phones, you can take pictures of things, like there's so much. And like the great thing that technology doesn't just help people with disabilities, it helps everybody.
Yeah.
You know, even the kid who's just slow at handwriting, it can help them and things like that. So.
Well, that's some good lessons. I like that. But also personally, at your personal level, does it bring you a bit, I don't know, satisfaction or fulfillment teaching, or what learning have you got from it? What would you like to see yourself in the future in some way?
Learning, it's made me very patient. Working with teenagers, you have to be very patient because you have to ask them to be quiet or sit in their seat 100 times in a 50-minute lesson. So I've learnt patience. That's a good lesson. I love teaching. Like it's funny because you're asking me at the end of term 3. We're on holidays in a week, so I'm tired. The kids are really feral at the moment. So you're asking me like at the worst time of the year, and I still love it. And I still love the kids. Like they're great. They're hilarious. So they don't listen to the teacher very often, but I still love it. Like I don't know. It's just every day is different. And even if your classroom's a zoo, it's still still very entertaining.
Yeah. Have you followed any, or have you kept in touch with any of your previous students?
I was messaging one. One of them messaged me last year actually when I was in Tokyo. She said, "Good luck, miss," and that was nice. Yeah, she's starting to be a nurse. So I was like, "Oh, that's great. She would be a really good nurse."
Nice. So in the classroom, you said that usually nearly 20% have some type of some sort of disability.
Yeah, and whether that's like not, it's a lot of it's not always diagnosed. So it's because it depends whether their parents have taken them to a psychologist or whatever they require to get a diagnosis.
Wow, it's so interesting. So, all right, now we cover a few topics. Is there any other topic that you would like to talk about, or any other important lesson that you say you have got in your life?
I think that's it.
Well, that's amazing. That's your journey with, what was the name of the position again?
Ocular cutaneous albinism.
Wow, but it didn't stop you to do surfing, to do goalball, to go to different countries and represent Australia, to teach students. Well, that's really good. I'm very happy for having you here. Could you like to end with just a last message, to encouragement for anyone who might be in some situation of struggling, or like anything similar, or yeah.
Give everything a go, and you at the end of the day, you're in control of your life. So, take every opportunity. If something's not working, do what you can to change it. Just remember that. I think that's the thing, that you control your life. So do what you want with it.